This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon everyone, good evening. We continue in the Iggeres HaGra, and as usual I just want to remind everyone, get everyone used to being able to know all the various venues. You could catch the shir on Torah Anytime or on podcast. We're continuing in the Iggeres HaGra, and the Gra was telling us about the importance of being careful with every word. That a person has to give an accounting for every word that they said. Not even a small word is lost. And therefore the Gra warned that one should train themselves as much as possible to sit on their own, because the most overarching of all chatoim is the chet of Lashon. Like Chazal say that Lashon Hara corresponds to all the various Averos, and the Gra said there's no need to be marech about the Aver which is more chamor than all Averos, and even all of one's mitzvahs or Torah cannot, so to speak, make up for improper use of words. One should acquire the following profession in this world: make themselves like an elaim, and put their two lips together very tightly like a mill. And the whole punishment of kaf hakela is just for extraneous words. For each extra word, one is liable, or maybe one deserves, to be slingshot from one end of the world to the other. Now this is all by Dvarim Yeserim, extra words. So we began last time by speaking about the very interesting Chakira, that the brother of Reb Chaim Volozhiner was Choiker. Reb Chaim Volozhiner had a brother, Reb Zalman of Volozhin, and in the Sefer Toldos Adam, he brings a Chakira that his brother Reb Chaim had. Namely, when Reb Chaim was a young man, he had a suffix when Chazal say, V'dibar tabam, v'loy b'dvarim acherim. By the way, that's the Gemara in Yuma, Adaf Yotes. And in a situation where a person is usher to speak divrei Torah, let's say on a base hamerchatz, are you allowed to speak sichas chulin? Is there only an issur to speak dvarim b'teilim where you can speak, where you could speak divrei Torah, or is there some kind of independent, inherent reason not to speak dvarim b'teilim? Maybe dvarim b'teilim are inherently prohibited. Now, based on what we said last time, that there's a pasuk in Koheles that God is in heaven and you're on earth, and a recognition that the Ribbon Shalom is above us, is reason enough to be very circumspect in the words that we say. So that would seem to be a reason not to speak Dvarim B'Teilim anywhere, even if it's not in a place where one would be allowed to learn. In other words, you could clear the Chakira even in general. In other words, let's say a person needs to take a break. They're not going to be learning anyway. So could we say, well, if they're not going to be learning anyway, so then they might as well speak their heart out? Or even then, even though they're not going to be learning, there's an inherent value of being quiet. Now, interestingly, the Rambam said that there are 5 categories of speech. The Rambam classified that just stories, just empty conversation, stories about anything, are the Rambam categorized as ma'os. The third category of speech, the Rambam says davar shu ma'os. That's devarim that have no toyelas for a person, like most stories. Now, in the Sefer Toldos Adam, he brings that Reb Chaim Volozhiner's conclusion was that it's only usher to speak dvarim b'teilim in a situation where you could be learning. And they even bring a story that when Reb Chaim Volozhiner came to the Beis HaMerchatz, a place that it's also to be mahar b'divrei Torah, he would ask, what's doing, what's the latest, what's the news, what's the politics, and he himself would say over various wondrous accounts and stories, and people were amazed. How does Reb Chaim know this? Where did he get this from? So it's somewhat difficult, because based on what we said, Dvarim B'Teilim, extra words, the Gra seems to be of the opinion that they are harmful and they are unworthy, and the Rambam categorizes them as davar ma'as. Well, they do say stories of the Chafetz Chaim, that when the Chafetz Chaim met people, he would speak, and one time the Chafetz Chaim was overheard having a lengthy conversation about cows, and the logic of that was, well, it's better than Lashon Hara. So, which may be that inherently speaking even about something that's harmless is harmful, but it's beneficial if it's going to protect someone from speaking Lashon Hara. You could say the same thing about the Beis HaMerchatz, maybe for people who are in a very high madrega and otherwise they couldn't help but learning. So for them, their conversation actually was beneficial to be able to be spared from speaking Divrei Torah. Okay. Be it as it may, the Gra continues. The Gra says, "V'chol zeh b'dvarim yiserim." Everything we said until now is talking about extra words. Ava b'dvarim hasurim, prohibited words, kagoyin lashon hara, to speak negatively about another Jew, v'leitzanos, or mockery, u'shvuos, and oaths, u'nedarim, and vows, u'machloikos, and fighting, u'klalos, and cursing, u'vifrat b'beis hakneses, and especially in shul. We know in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Kuf Nun Aleph, he brings it's prohibited to have idle conversation in shul. The Mishnah Berurah there says, even conversation that's needed for parnasa, that you're allowed to speak outside of shul, one cannot speak in shul. Furthermore, the Gra continues, Uv'Shabbos v'Yom Tov, and that's another theme that the Gra is going to speak about coming up soon. Speaking on Shabbos, talking on Shabbos, not Lashon Hara, talking in general. We're going to see that the Gra brings a Yushalmi, that you need a heter to say Shabbos Shalom to someone. You need a heter to wish someone good Shabbos. Otherwise, really, ideally, speech was not meant for the seventh day of the week. The Lashon of the Gra is Uvekoishi hitiru loymar shalom b'Shabbos. With great difficulty, Chazal had to find a heter to wish someone hello on Shabbos. So certainly complete extraneous conversation is something to consider on Shabbos. For these infractions, there's serious repercussions. One would have to go to the very deep down. It's impossible to estimate the great travails that one perhaps would be culpable for one of these violations. Not even one conversation is lost that's not recorded. You have these winged creatures that are constantly floating near a person. They have a digital recorder, it looks like this, and they're just recording what you're saying. And not only that, they have cameras also now. You're on camera, you're being recorded. The koisen kol dibur v'dibur, every word is written. Ki oif hashamayim yoylech hasakol, because the bird of heaven brings the sound, ubal kinafayim yagedavar, and the winged creature will relay the matter. Al titein es picha lachti es besarecha, do not place to your mouth to bring sin to your flesh. V'al toimar lefnei amalach, don't say to the angel kishgagahi, that it's incidental. Lama yiktsaif, why should God get angry? In other words, everything mentioned until now is for extra words, but for prohibited words, that's something very serious. And at the very least, what we could take out of what the Gra is saying, the very great accounting that is incumbent upon us, really, for every word we say. In other words, if somebody has to spend money, they think twice. If somebody has to talk, they don't even think once. Talking sort of is natural. People like to follow the Gemara. Dibur is not a maisa, but the Gra to the Gra, the faculty of speech was a very expensive commodity. It's something that default should not be used. It's, so to speak, like a gun. You use it when you need to. You don't if somebody owns a gun, they don't use it just because they have it. The same thing with speech. You don't use it just because you have it. It's a tool, it's a weapon. Just because you own a screwdriver, it doesn't mean you go around all day, like waving it at people. Okay, it's very nice you have a screwdriver. When you have something to screw in, then you use it. It's very nice you have a hammer, but you don't walk around all day banging. So just because someone has the faculty of speech, the Rebbeinu Shalom made many safety devices on the faculty of speech. The first being the teeth. The teeth is the first thing. So the first thing is, by default, your teeth should be closed. And then the second thing is your lips should be closed. So you say, well, in that case, I'm not going to be speaking. That's right. It's like a revolver. You're not using it unless you need to. And that's why the Gemara says the tongue is the only limb which is horizontal, which means by default it is in a resting position. Now there are many things you have to use it for Limud Torah, for Chesed, for Tefillah, and so forth. Sometimes you need to use it for Parnasa. Sometimes you need it to... Part of the mitzvah of V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha is you make somebody feel good, you give somebody a comment. However, in general, the default position of the mouth is shasika. That's why the Rambam says la'olam yarbe adam b'shasika. Okay, Rabbi said we'll pick it up tomorrow. Of course, everyone's invited tonight, 9:15, Masechta Yevamos Daf Chavtes. Wishing everyone a great evening. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.